The Committee on Parole is called back to order. The time is 12:23. Our next case is Mr. Clydel Cummings. Mr. Cummings, if you would, please give us your full name and DOC number.
My name is Clydel Cummings, and my DOC number is 300884.
Thank you. Mr. Cummings, let me explain our procedure to you. First, we're going to do a parole interview with you. At the appropriate time, we'll allow those persons who wish to have any input to say whatever it is they like. We have a number of people here today on your behalf. Ms. Meredith Angelson is your attorney. Is that you, ma'am?
Yes, sir.
Okay. We have Ms. Jessica Fuqua, who is with the
Ms. Yuba is our intern as well. She's with Innocence Project New Orleans, and she's present.
okay. She's not speaking. Is that right? Okay. Then we have Miss Clydel Whitehurst, who is not speaking. Then we have Miss Virginia White, who is with the Innocence Project of New Orleans, who will be speaking. Mary Lee Baker, who is here just for support. Jasmine Whitehurst, who is your sister, who will be speaking. Blanche Bailey, Keith Singletary, Terry Jackson, and your daughter, Portia Harris, are all here to give you moral support. After we have that interview, you will have an opportunity to say whatever you'd like to say to the board, and then your lawyer will have an opportunity to wrap up, and we'll vote. You understand how our procedure works?
Yes, sir.
Okay. This is the matter of Clydel Cummings, DOC number 300884, date of birth, August the 25th of 1968. He's a fourth felony offender. He has a parole eligibility date of October the 7th of 2023. He does not earn good time. He has a life sentence, and he was sentenced for possession with intent to distribute cocaine after having been adjudicated a habitual offender on February the 3rd of 2010. Mr. Cummings, is that basically information accurate?
Yes, it is.
Cummings, your case has been assigned to me to initiate our interview, so I'll begin the process. Mr. Cummings, how old are you, sir?
54.
How long have you been in prison on these charges?
About 14 years and 8 months.
Let's talk a little bit, Mr. Cummings, about you. How much education have you had?
I graduated high school.
Graduate high school before you came to prison?
Yes.
Okay. What year did you graduate high school?
1986.
Did you work while you were out?
Yes, I did.
What kind of work did you do back in 86? Let's talk a little bit about your early years. What kind of work did you do when you first got out of high school?
When I first got out of high school, I worked at Big O and Tires. I changed tires for close to about 2-3 years. But at the same time, I was working at UPS, and I was loading and unloading. They was training me to drive the trucks with a chauffeur's license.
When did you get into drugs?
I got into drugs when I moved to Louisiana after I left Oakland, California.
We're known for a lot of things. I guess drugs is one of them. So tell me how you got started in all of that.
Well, actually, I came to Louisiana for my mom. She was sickly.
And how old were you at the time?
At that time, I was probably close to 22, 23 years old. I was still young.
All right. So how'd you get involved in drugs?
Well, the elements that was around me at the time, that's all. Well, actually, old people that I grew up with, that's all they was doing was selling drugs. And at the time,
were you using drugs as well?
No, I never used drugs.
Have you ever used drugs at all?
No. Closest I ever got to using drugs is when the doctor prescribed them to me.
Medication.
Right.
Prescription medication. So you've never even tried marijuana or cocaine or anything like that? Why not?
Actually, watching the family members and friends, it just wasn't my cup of tea.
But yet you sold marijuana sold drugs for a long time.
Well, I sold drugs off and on, trying to make extra money while I was working.
Well, how often did you sell drugs? How many years did you sell drugs? I mean, you and I both know you were arrested in 91, 92, 99, 2004, 2008, you're serving a life sentence for drugs.
Right.
So is it fair to say you've done this all your life? Since
Yeah,
you
that's fair. That's very true, there, sir. To be honest with you, it was something that I tried and kept on trying and kept on trying, and apparently I ain't no good at it.
Well, it earned you a life sentence.
Right. It really did.
Well, you say you're not good at it and you got caught. What do you think the effect of your drug dealing has had on the individuals you sold drugs to?
Well, to be honest with you, since I've been here in Angola, I've been in a reintegration dome close to about 9 years before I got moved to the trustee dome. And the, that's a very intense thing that I had to go through, to face people that's, actually wanting the drugs, do anything for the drugs. And the way I'm trying to put it in a way that I never want to see me be the cause of somebody else being addicted to something that I ain't never tried and I would never try. But at the same time, I done learned to be a little patient and understanding because I know it's just more than just the victim that I'm talking to. There's more victims involved than that, just the person that I was selling it to. So to be honest with you, Dad, I know I done committed a lot of damage to the neighborhoods and my neighbors and families for a long, long time.
Mr. Cummings, in your 14 years and the 8 years where you've been now, have you given any thought to how many people may be dead as a result of your drug dealing?
If you would asked me that before I came to prison, no, I wouldn't have never gave any thought to it. But now I got a complete understanding.
Tell me a little bit about that.
But to be honest with you, I didn't watch people die from the stuff that, it's not the same stuff that I was selling on the street, but it's much worse now. And it's a hard feeling, man, just to see somebody just addicted to something that they can't control. And
Mr. Cummings,
like I said,
go
I'm
ahead.
getting tired of words, but I understand where you're trying to come to.
Well, let's talk a little bit. You've been in prison this time 14 years. You've been
Yeah.
arrested a number of other times. I mean, obviously you're a fourth felony offender. So tell me about the other times you've been in prison. How much other time have you served in prison altogether besides these 14 years?
Actually, the first time I did 3.5 years, it was like a cakewalk. They sent me to a Paul. I ain't gonna lie to you. It felt like I feel like I could do it again.
Sure, I understand.
And then the second time I went, I was in a detention center for about 18 months. All I was doing, locked up in the building, got fat, and came back home. So altogether, I might have did 5 years
Have
with
you
both.
had programs before coming to prison this time?
No, only program I ever did was when I was at Winfield. I did the culinary arts and horticulture, and which I just took the culinary arts because I like cooking. But the horticulture thing, it was just something that they just gave me.
Let's talk about some of the programs that you've taken while you've been in prison this time. Let's talk about programs specifically related to substance abuse, drug dealing, those kinds of things. What sort of programs have you taken that's given you some insight into what you have done to people and how you might not do that again? So tell me what you've learned in terms of what programs you've taken while you've been in prison.
Well,
Particularly with substance abuse. We're going to get into some of the other programs you've taken, but I'm more interested in your drug deal.
okay. On the substance abuse side, I took that in 2013. And they were showing me that, that the people I was dealing with was just not victims. There was other family victims. But if you don't mind, I'd like to add something else if it's okay with you.
Certainly, no, this is your interview. I want to know what you're thinking and what you've been through.
Okay, then. I was in Kairos. I don't know if you
I
know
am
what that
familiar
is.
with
Kairos.
Kairos.
Okay, and did Kairos group meetings every Saturday. It's like 15 of us. We meet every Saturday. We've been doing this for about close to 7 years. And we talk about everything. I mean, when I say everything, I mean everything. And you got brothers that's been addicted, and some probably still is addicted. They just don't want to say so. But one explained to me that when you're an addict, you're always an addict.
Right.
And the only thing that can help you is the person that's next to you and the man himself. But the understanding that I got from him is that I got to learn to take responsibility for the things that I do and the things that I plan. And saying that I don't understand why this person coming for this and this person want this here and why they don't want this here. It's not an excuse. So they taught me that instead of being in a little boy's mind, that I need to step up and be a man and take the responsibility for everything that I have. So over the years, I've been working on sacrificing this, sacrificing that. But when I say sacrifice, I mean that learning to deal with my brothers like they my brothers and not a token to stand up to do something for me for nothing. So in other words, I wouldn't do no more now for me, myself, that I wouldn't do for the next person. So in other words, I'm willing to sacrifice anything it takes to keep me afloat for my family and make sure that my family is straight. And I don't want them to never think I'm gonna back up and go back to the same thing.
Tell me a little bit about your family. Your children,
I got 3 girls,
and how old are your daughters?
one 37, one 29, the other one 22.
You have a good relationship with them?
Well, I've been on a rocky road because I've been in and out of jail so much that really none of them really don't know me like know me. But my middle daughter, she been keeping up with me lately. We just rebuilt our little relationship. I got to meet 3 of the grandbabies. And my oldest daughter, we was keeping up until I came to jail this time. So I lost contact with her by being here in Angola. And my youngest daughter, she really don't know me because when I left, she was like 5 or 6.
Tell me a little bit about some of the other things that you've done while you've been in prison. I understand that you did Tier Walker training. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, nurse's aid is a real challenge because you run across all kinds of different characters, even some that remind me of myself when I want something. And you got some that's psychotic, you got some that want to get more attention than they need. You even have some that try to hang themselves. If I don't know if it's on record, but I saved like 3. Actually, literally saved 3. And most of them they say you're just supposed to walk the tier and pay attention. But it's more than that. It's another human being that you're watching out for and that you know that they're mentally unstable most of the time. And it's
What other programs or what other things have you done similar to that, sort of helping out everyone else in the community there in prison? Anything else?
yes, I did I say hobby shopping. Well, I would say I work in the hobby shop. It's very, therapeutic. I just started messing with it when my mama died. And, I really was on another page then because I felt like I had lost the world, you know. Now, but during the hobby shopping, I get to go to the rodeo and sell little personal items and stuff. But every year that they have United Way come through, you get a chance to give. And then, the warden, it depends on who he is or who doing the thing. He asks you, do you have anything to give? And I love, when I feel that somebody enjoys something that I'd have made personally with my hands. So I always try to offer more than I can. But for you.
Go ahead.
The next thing is, like I said, by being in the dome with the brothers in the reintegration dome, they're not able, to do for self most of the time. And by me doing the little rodeo, making the little money that they do, give us a chance to make. I normally give a little Christmas party every year for them. I did it for the last 3 years. So that was like, how you say, giving back. Even though I know I didn't have to do it, I do it. And I'm not trying to say something like, I'm able, but I'm not really able to do it, but I do it anyway.
Tell me what you would plan on doing when you get out. What kind of work would you do? A young man, or what kind of work would you do?
Well, my plan was with the help of
These ladies smiled when I said you're a young man. To me, you're a very young man. 64 years old is a young man. So
I like that.
What you can do when you get out.
Yeah, I like that. Well, my plan is with the help of the Innocent of Project of New Orleans is to try to get a CDL license, which I know that it would be very possible to, with them backing me up to, helping me going to get the grant and everything, and also get a vendor's license. So that way I could be able to sell some of the hovercraft that I be doing that I love to do now. And I feel that I could make a nice little route with.
Let's talk a little bit about your disciplinary records. How many write-ups have you had?
That's a good question. The last one I remember was 213.
What was that? Remember?
Yes, I do. It was very funny to me at the time. They wrote me up for walking too slow on the tip, not speedily moving.
How's your health?
My health is, if you ask me, I think I'm doing just fine, but I'm a borderline diabetic.
Your reentry plan is you have multiple reentry plans. Which do you prefer? You want to go to California?
I love to go to California and be with my daddy. My dad is stage 4 cancer, and I wasn't at home for my mom, and I like to be at home for my dad. Oh, and also I just found out yesterday that they granted the interstate compact if I get granted today.
It has been granted?
Yes.
It was granted? Okay. Wardens, can y'all tell us anything about Mr. Cummings?
You covered everything. I don't have anything that I can say about Mr. Cummings. I wish him the best if y'all grant him.
Mr. Cummings, you are a Class A trustee. How long have you been a Class A trustee?
Well, actually, I just made Class A trustee about 3 months ago. And I've been a Class B trustee going on close to about 3 years. Well, it's been 2 years and some months, but I'd say about 3 years.
I noticed in your jacket you have a number of faith-based programs. Tell me what those mean to you.
Well, the faith-based program is, like I said, that goes back with my Cairo brothers. We do everything pretty much together. But learning about Jesus was a wonderful thing because he was never part of my plan. But now that, since I've been dealing with the faith-based programs, I've learned a lot about giving, understanding, sacrifice. Sacrifice is one of the most, really, to be honest, which is the most hardest part I had to ever come around to sacrifice. Even though I've been sacrificing, messing with these drugs, I feel like now I could sacrifice for something more important. Learning my kids and my grandbabies. I really love to get a chance to hold my grandbabies.
I think that's all I have. Any other questions? Okay. Now we'll hear from your supporters. We'll hear from, first we'll hear from Ms. Virginia White with the Innocence Project.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Virginia White. I'm the Client Services Specialist at the Innocence Project New Orleans. And in this role, I just provide a range of reentry support. And as Mr. Cummings stated, he's completed a lot of DOC programming in addition to his participation and dedication to the Cairo meetings once a week for the last 7 years, and also his daily hobby craft. And this has all aided in a holistic approach to his rehabilitation. The Cairo meetings seem to have helped him develop a lot of empathy for others. He just shared that he realizes the impacts of his actions on the victims, and he's connected that to a sense of understanding for what he did to the community and how it impacted the community by selling narcotics. He talks about those meetings as being the most transformative thing that he's been a part of in DOC, as he shared just now. Mr. Cummings' plan to relocate to California is something that we definitely will be able to continue supporting him with. He plans to live with his father, and he's maintained positive relationships and regular communication with his family. So he has brothers and sisters. His siblings are also in California. So there's a strong support system there, in addition to the continued support from IPNO Client Services. And we're equipped to continue the ongoing direct support while Mr. Cummings is living in California. And we've even established a plan for identifying local resources through community mapping in the area that he'll be living in. So throughout our communication with Mr. Cummings, we conducted a needs assessment plan to identify his long and short-term goals. So he plans to work with his brother while pursuing a CDL license, and he's devoted to his craftsmanship and painting. So he plans to build on these skills, and we've discussed the process for registering him for a vendor's license and even identified markets where he can sell his products in California. He has a very strong, solid reentry plan that has a lot of support from family and also from community resources involving IPNO. And we will maintain communication with Mr. Cummings to make sure that he's achieving the goals identified in his reentry plan.
Thank you very much, Ms. White. We appreciate your comments. Now we hear from your sister, Ms. Jasmine Whitehurst.
This is the only picture that I have with my brother. I was 9 years old. It's time to create some new memories. We miss him. He has a host of nieces, nephews, siblings, grandchildren he has never met, and we're just ready for him to come home. He has a really strong support system, and we're not gonna let him fail. He can't. He's worked too hard. He's doing great. He's helping others while he's in, and he's become a much better person. So I'm gonna keep it short, but we love him, and we're just ready for him to come home to be with his family.
Thank you, Ms. Whitehurst. We appreciate your comments. Mr. Cummings, is there anything you'd like to say to the board before we turn it over to your attorney to close us out?
Yes, I just want to just say, man, thank y'all for allowing me to even have this chance. And before I came, it was just about hustling the wrong way and not understanding. But by being inside, I understand that, the victims and I'm aware of this here. And now all I want to do now is the chance at freedom and not, look back at these old behaviors and learn from them.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cummings. We appreciate your comments. Ms. Engelson?
Thank you. I'm Meredith Angelson. I direct the Unjust Punishment Project at Innocence Project New Orleans. Mr. Cummings is a nonviolent lifer, and under Act 22, that means he's eligible for parole after 15 years. As he said, he's served 14 years and 8 months, and so he's actually coming before this board early. And I know this board tends to see people oftentimes when they're past their eligibility date, but they've been dogged by conduct issues. I just wanted to point out that Mr. Cummings has been doing great and has been doing great for such a long time that he's here well in advance of his eligibility date. And with him, I think what you see is what you get. He's a very calm, steady, poised person, has a wonderful mind, has a lot of maturity. And those are the traits that have really impacted the way that he has spent his time in prison. He spent his entire sentence at Camp D, which is a place where you often see people struggling. He, on the other hand, hasn't had a write-up in 10 years. He's been low risk for over a decade. He's made Class A recently, but had been a trustee, for I think about 5 years, 6 years before that. And he held the same job at Camp D for about 9 years until he was recently promoted into a more trusted assignment, cleaning security towers. A lot of that time he was also in the reintegration dorm. He's talked about how, the impact that had on him, but part of the reason he was kept there is because he was the positive influence on other people. He was the example to those folks who were coming out of the cell blocks, the people who were kind of having the most trouble and were, needing some stability. He was an example to them of what it looks like to be able to manage yourself in a chaotic situation, to stay calm, to do what you're supposed to do, to keep your job. He actually worked 2 jobs. And until he was moved to the trustee dorm, that is where he was. At the same time, he's never been idle, working multiple assignments and these Kairos meetings that have meant a lot to him. And I think from our conversations and what he's shared with the board, just pulled together the lessons from the DOC programming and actually been able to apply them in conversation and through relationships and help him process not just things like the loss of his mother, but also, understand his past behaviors and kind of manage himself in the present as well. And so he's engaged in this kind of multifaceted approach to his rehabilitation here, and I think it has really worked for him. He's very excited about California life. We were very excited to get the news yesterday about the Interstate Compact being granted. I think not returning to Shreveport, going to be with this part of his family opens up a lot of possibilities for him. You've heard about those. He's supported by them and his family, by his family, and also by Innocence Project New Orleans. And so we hope that this, his planned commitment to live differently than he had been living in the last 14 years of showing that he can live in a way where he's following all the rules, doing what he's supposed to be doing, being productive, should give this board confidence that he will succeed if he's released. And we hope that you will allow him that chance.
Thank you very much, ma'am, for your comments. Down ready to vote? Yes. Mr. Cummings, in reviewing your record and in reviewing the information I had in your file, the things you've accomplished, and in reviewing the information the Innocence Project had submitted to us, I came in thinking that I might give you a favorable vote. Your interview confirmed that.
Thank you.
You appear to be very honest about what you were doing and what effect it has had on people. It's unfortunate that during all of the incarcerations and all of the time you had, you didn't have any other programs, but you finally got some programs, some good programs where you are. It appears to me that the system worked on you the way it's supposed to work. Programs there that help develop character and help develop people to understand what their wrongdoing has meant to other people. It seems like you've done that. So my vote today, based upon your prison record, 14 years that you've served, you are serving a life sentence. Not often does one get life sentence for drugs, but you got it. That's a life sentence. It's something that we have to deal with. It's a consideration that we have to take into account. You only served 14 years, but you have served those years well, and you've learned a lot of things. So my vote today would be based upon your low score, based upon the things that you've accomplished while you've been in prison, is to grant your parole to ICOTS to California under the guidance of the Innocence Project of New Orleans. I would anticipate that they would stay with you for at least a year to make sure that you do those things, and then to abide by all of the rules of your parole officer there. I'm just one of 3 votes, but that's my vote. Mr. Russia?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, Mr. Cummings. How are you?
How you doing?
Good. You had a real good interview. As your attorney said, you're a very calm individual, deliberate, and I enjoyed listening to you. Mr. Cummings, based on criteria set forth by Act 122 of the Louisiana Revised Statutes, I've looked things that would stop me from granting. But based on your improved disciplinary conduct, you had to have disciplinary right up in 10 years, I think. Good programs, good family support, a good interview. The supervision history is okay, and you have a low risk assessment. Based on all those factors, I grant your release under one condition, that it be to California, and you have a good visit with your father.
Thank you.
Now, I'm going to put some conditions on that supervision. First of all, you have a curfew from 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. And you are to do community service with at-risk youth. You have a story to tell. I want you to tell that story, and I want you to lead the young people in the right direction. Okay?
Thank you.
Well, thank you. Mr. Russia, thank you. Mr. Freeman?
Okay, Mr. Cummings. You know, I sit here and I do agree with my colleagues. I think you're a changed person. One thing you got to remember, you're back in life. So if you get out there and violate parole, there's probably not going to be much hope for ever being granted again. So take full advantage of this. You have a great family. They're all going to support you. Innocent Project. You know, you have what it takes, but you got to do it yourself. So my vote is also to grant.
You have 3 votes to grant, and those votes are to ICOT in California, with supervision by the Innocence Project, and certain conditions being that you'll have a curfew from 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. and do community service work, hopefully with at-risk youth 4 hours a month. Good luck to you, sir.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
You did that.
I loved it. I feel like we really needed that. Man. Well, what we'll do is I'll share my thoughts and then also go over his appeal on this. But can you imagine a life sentence being handed down in, what was it, 2008? It's for dealing, and he was caught with, what was it, like an ounce of the stuff, and I think that's like a $2,200 or so street value, and they threw the habitual offender at him. Now there's so much to unpack here. You know, there are very few interviews that happen when someone says, no, I've never used that I believe, or that the board believes. But in this case, I really do believe it, which makes this case very unique. You know, interesting to be a completely sober dealer that still got caught as often as he was caught. And like he said, he wasn't very good at it. It was just from up to down, from my perception, just a brilliant interview. And I think we learn a lot from this kind of case. It was interesting that he stated the first two times that he served were really, he said, like walks in the park. He said the second time that he served, he said it was like 18 months or something. He got locked up, they fed him, and he went home. So it's interesting to see the shift that we go through in terms of how punishment is served, where on one end of the spectrum, they give these light sentences, which apparently don't, but then they flip to the opposite extreme and give a life sentence. And he probably had no idea that he was really facing a life sentence. I mean, I know that he probably, maybe he did know, but maybe he didn't believe it. I don't know. And I always compare it to what happened on 9/11. Before 9/11, it was easy to get into an airplane. You can get into an airplane with box cutters. After 9/11, they're basically strip searching your grandmother who's in a wheelchair. And it's like, we don't need to go from one extreme to another. It's insane. We can do things in moderation, but apparently we can't do that very well. We just don't seem to be able to do that very well. But really, to think that a man at his age to be given a life sentence without the possibility of parole is insane to me. How do you do that and lock away? And then this would happen in 2008 in the United States of America. He has no violent offenses. He's never hurt children. When they arrested him, he wasn't found with the weapon. And, to his point, like he said, the dealing back then was different than it is now. He may have never taken a life. People don't, that I'm aware of, OD on crack. Now, it's terrible. And what he said, which just felt very true, what he realized. I'm looking for my notes on what he said. It's hard having to see people addicted, being that type of dealer, and that you have people coming to you that are in the worst places in their lives. They're controlled by their addiction. And he was facilitating that. And it is terrible. And to be able to do that, to sit in a room and especially someone who's sober, so he's complete control. There is a certain evil about that. Because he would have been seeing that pain and feeding into the pain and been around that pain and that suffering and causing it. But he came to say that he didn't just repeat words that he learned in programs. He was reciting things that he's an intelligent man. He's insightful. And I don't think it was manipulation. Remember, he was locked up. He thought that he was locked up for life. He could have taken that sentence any which way, and he took it. He took it to the fullest for the best. And it was because of Act 122, which basically they said, which is a great act as part of what Louisiana Parole Project had a lot to do with lobbying for it, and that's why he's allowed to get a parole hearing. They looked at all of these crazy, non-violent life sentences and said, this is insane. This is absolutely insane. So they passed the act, and it allows people to get a hearing. Now, in that bucket, unfortunately, we do see people that shouldn't ever be getting out. But I think that this is just a perfect example of the system working, where an act was passed that would give him the opportunity for parole, and this man should not be sitting in prison. And I really do like the condition that Mr. O'Shea asked. And I don't know if you picked up on it, but they were really nervous about Mr. O'Shea, his attorney. Like you can cut the tensity with the knife, and that's because you never know with Mr. O'Shea. He goes really hard on the toughest criminals, which we love about him. But I have seen him reject people that I thought were in similar cases like this. There was one guy, I didn't get it recorded. This is before I started recording, but he was a high school football coach, and he was like an icon in the city. You know, like he was more than just, you know, he was coach in a football town like Louisiana. He was coach, and he had a second life where he was dealing on the side. Nothing to do with the students, nothing to do with, I mean, his players. He just was a dealer on the side, and he was caught, and he had served a long time, I think like 20 years. And he had a great interview. You know, he was just a solid, you know, the perfect interview. And Mr. O'Shea denied him. And I was upset about that. And that's just to show you don't know with Mr. O'Shea. And I think that his attorney and everyone was in the room was like waiting on that. It just felt like a really honest interview. And you know, so great to see the Innocence Project involved. I really love them. It's just to see everything come together. To come together to make really what I felt like was a perfect hearing. Was it Dr. Virginia White that spoke from the Innocence Project? She's great. His attorney is great. We've seen her many times. But let's go look into this. What he did. It's interesting. Let's see, I had to stream. And seeing his daughters, they were sitting there and then break down in tears when he was going over the relationship. And just so sad that he, like he said, he grew up with his youngest daughter, never even knew him. And then his father's dying, and such a great story that he gets to go and be with his father in the final days of his life. So on October 2008, remember 2008? That was a bad year. That was like the Great Recession. That was a bad year. There was a confidential informant that said that they were selling Pepsi Cola from room 25 of Lexington Motel. So a search warrant was obtained. At approximately 11 p.m., members of the street-level interdiction unit, a team composed of Cato sheriff's deputies and Shreveport police officers, arrived on the scene to execute the warrant. 3 officers used a battering ram to knock down the door. One officer noticed a man jumping out the back window of the room. Another officer ran behind the building and found the defendant hiding under the building. In the motel room, officers found a rock on a plate with a razor blade. In a small purse, officers found 142 rocks, individually packaged. The total weight was 25 grams. In search of the incident, officers found more than $1,000 in small bills in the defendant's pockets. The defendant was charged by bill of information of possession of Schedule 2 with intent to distribute. The defendant was tried by a jury and convicted as charged. You know, and it could be they threw the book at him because he went to jury trial, but it could also be that they were going to hit him with an habitual offender no matter what, so he had to go to jury trial. We don't really know. We have seen people get these. What they will do too, we have seen this a bunch of times, is and I don't know how this is legal, but they would do a plea deal and give them a light sentence, like maybe 8 years or something. And then while they're serving their time, they would apply an habitual offender act on them, and they would have life without any form of, no trials, no, jury trial. No. So they've done that. We have seen that happen a lot. If you want to talk about what feels totally nuts, but yeah, they give you a plea deal and then they come later and slap on the habitual offender life, no parole. They were doing that in Louisiana for non-violent offenders. Yeah, I know it's nuts, but The defendant was charged with being fourth felony offender on February 3rd, 2010. A hearing was held. The defendant was adjudicated a fourth felony offender. The sentence to life imprisonment. And then he filed a motion to deviate from the mandatory to reconsider the sentence. The motion was denied. February 17th, he appealed. And he appealed on the state that there was insufficient evidence that it was to convict him of possession with intent to distribute. And basically, so through here, he goes through all of the reasons why there wasn't proof that it was him. So, for example, the cash that was found in his pocket, they actually had a receipt from a pawn shop for like $600. That was proof that that was cash that was gotten legally. They said that they never fingerprinted the glass tray in the room. The hotel room was not taken under his name. It was under a different person's name. The woman that he was dating testified that she had no idea he was a dealer, which is possible because, remember, he wasn't a user. So there's, they brought up all of these facts, but of course, he had no chance. And that was it. As far as he was concerned, he was going to spend the rest of his life in prison. And I'll drop this link if you want to go through it in more detail. But it's more like if you're like a law what's the word I'm looking for, enthusiast. If you wanted to really read through all the reasons of the appeals and all of the sightings, and it is quite interesting, but we don't, it's not like the main focus of this channel. But again, and then the lawnmower is going. Sorry if I'm being redundant. I felt like this was just a great, we learned a lot. We learned, I think, from this is that the earlier sentences he was getting, he viewed as just a slap on the wrist. It was no big deal. Like he said, I got fed and went home. So if you're making a ton of money dealing, it's like the risk versus reward, like a normal business calculation, you could argue it's worth it. If you can make thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars a month and then, spend a year in prison, hey, it's worth the risk. And then all of a sudden they gave him a life sentence without parole. And, maybe if they had given him a longer sentence to begin with, he would have stopped. He's back in a life sentence, like Mr. Freeman said. So anything that he does wrong to violate his parole, he'll be back in here. So you got to be on your toes for, I think, the rest of his life. I think so. But I felt good about this. It's good to see wrongs being corrected. I thought he had a great interview. I don't think there was manipulation there. I think it was honesty. I think he's going to go back. He's going to get a CDL license. I'd love to buy some of his hobby shop stuff if I could find it. And please do the YouTube thing. It really helps the algorithm. With that, I'll let you go.